Good morning to members of the Committee for Strategy and Advocacy Committee. Welcome to all. I'll just say I'll be chairing the meeting today as I have apologies from the chair, Hannah Fanini Tahiti and Sven Thowning, so I'll just move that we receive those apologies. Can I get a second of thank you? Second to Deputy Mayor Rebecca Ryan. Moving on to any declarations of interest. Take there is none, so we'll move on to item 4.1, which is the confirmation of minutes. And just open the floor if anyone has any questions or comments around those minutes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Rebecca Ryan. Seconded Councillor Linwood. All those public receive those minutes, so aye.
Aye.
Against. That's carried. So moving on to reports from the Chief Executive and staff for information, and we'll start with item 5.1, and I'll hand it over to Joanne O'Neill to introduce the paper.
Kia ora tātou. So this paper would have been delivered by Officer Van der Speck, but unfortunately we have a number of people who are on leave this week due to school holidays and Easter, of course. So this paper is being delivered just in relation to information regarding the strategies that are presently in place for council, which you will see in the box there, but also to open a discussion about, excuse me, the potentials of where council could form other strategies that would help assist us in planning for the future. So you'll see that at this point in time, the Coastal Hazards Resilience Strategy is underway. And later in the documents from Stronger Waitaki, you'll also note the request from that group regarding a youth strategy. I'll also put on the table the potential, given the work that other councils are doing, particularly when I look at Gore Council, whose members of their community over the age of 65 are actually less than Waitaki's on a percentage population viewpoint. They have a healthy aging strategy, which is an excellent strategy and aligned with a directorate sheet that they have to inform people where and how to get services. So just to consider in relation to this, both the youth strategy and a strategy for older people within the region, and just open up for any questions.
Before I go to questions, do you want to say anything from your part, Mayor Tavendale?
Yes, sorry, I've just hit this a wee bit late this morning, but I guess there's a few thoughts I've got on our strategy and just reflecting on a conversation I was just having actually around us also having a think through what our conversations are going to be at our national level and regional level around the future for local government, starting to identify which of these needs to have that local view and local feel, and which ones we could be building into our conversations around regional and national actually could sit better at that level. Because I think sometimes we do have the councils all running a whole lot of their own strategies and spending a whole lot of policy, elected member and everyone else's time building everything individually from the ground up. But maybe as we're working through them, we can also start to think, is there portions of this strategy or is there the entirety of it that could be done more regionally and it still makes sense, or done nationally? Not wanting to add a whole lot of new work streams, but I think we need to keep that in the back of our mind as we're stepping into what the future could look like, so that we're not running off doing a strategy now for Waitaki that may not look like Waitaki in a governance sense in the future, I don't know. But you know, if it's something that we've got in common with some of our neighbours, for instance, and could have a stronger advocacy or a stronger voice nationally, if we actually joint with our neighbours and said, like, for instance, the housing strategy, which I think, you know, the housing strategy we've got is consistent and it probably needs to be updated at some stage. But these are issues that are being shared across our regions. And surely if there's some consistency in messaging through there and the ability to pull out a great big idea of a funding opportunity that could feed into a number of communities. If we're doing that regionally and coming with one big package that has the data underpinning it, then it's so much stronger than Waitaki saying, hey, you know, you don't see us as important, but homelessness is a problem. It might be hidden in Waitaki, but if we're looking at that across some of the, say, Otago councils, for instance, and we're all sharing that, is there some fixes that could be more regionalised? So there's not much detail in that I get, but I think as we work through these things, these are the conversations I'd like to see us having.
Thank you. I'll just take Deputy Mayor Ryan and then Councillor Hawkins.
Did you want to respond, Jo?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Is that okay?
yeah, I was just going to say that that's a great point, because there are several different levels of strategies. Of course, we have the Heoranga strategy, which sits with Te Whatuara, which is around healthy ageing for New Zealand as a whole. And then, of course, we have more of a local strategy. So actually having greater collaboration between councils that experience the same issues, which is why I raised Gore, because of their large older population as well. It's great to learn from each other as well. So I think that that's a fantastic conversation to be having at that level too. So thank you.
Thank you. And I guess probably nicely following on maybe from Mayor Tavendale's point, like I guess I'm always sort of cautious of over strategizing and creating more documents just for the sake of it. But I guess so, like, yeah, before we are talking about new strategies or gaps, I was quite interested to know like how well our current ones kind of connect to each other, and like I guess, are we, you know, how easy or hard is it for staff to kind of see the bigger picture? And I think there's some opportunities here to, you know, natural alignment here to kind of group them almost and be looking at where there's, yeah, to sort of, yeah, not duplicate a whole lot of work.
Yeah, and in relation to that, that's something that's been really top of mind for me, and really a roadmap so people understand where the starting of the journey is from a strategy and the intention of the journey. So these strategies are very detailed in themselves, and will all feed into the organisational strategy, of course, as a whole. But it will be great to have working groups of people within council that are actually driving these strategies for achievement too. So yeah, great point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, these are questions from someone who's council law but not on the committee. I share the Mayor's view and Councillor Ryan's. My view is that we are probably entering into an era in local government where, you know, with the financial constraints and inhibitions that are going to be imposed upon us, the notion of adding strategies and expectations and costs is going to become increasingly problematic in my view. Looking at the strategies we have at the moment, I notice on page 9 and page 10, there are 4 strategies that are overdue for review. The biodiversity strategy, the harbour strategy, which should have been reviewed separately in 24 and 21, and also tourism and recreation strategies, both of which should have been reviewed in 2025. So is there any analysis of those strategies underway, and when will something come to this committee and or full council?
To answer that simply, we're very well aware of the work plan that needs to be underway regarding the strategies that we do have in place at the moment. The resources available to advance those simply haven't been in place right now, but we do have, for example, the tourism strategy, which is underway with Tourism Waitaki. So I note your point that some of them are overdue. I also note from a resource perspective, those things that need to be in place aren't quite there yet, but hopefully they will come to council within the next year.
Just before we go too much further, I know that Hannah's done a lot of work in planning for this paper, so I might invite you to the chair, Hannah, and just while you're getting ready, we'll take a question from comment from Mayor Tavendale.
Yeah, just to touch on Councillor Hopkins' point there, because there is timeframes without a doubt through this that show when things should be visited. But I I guess I caution just working to dates that we've been preset because it's now at 5 years and we need to revisit that strategy. I think we're going to be finding ourselves with a huge amount of strategic work trying to organise our regional conversations around simplifying local government proposals. And so I think we need to be taking this list and taking it as read and saying, hey, this is when it's saying it's due. We understand that. But we then need to go, is that what our current priorities sit like? Because I think some of these ones, you know, I talk biodiversity strategy, which there's so much work happening at a national level around RMA changes and things that could fall out and have a bit of an implication on this kind of work and what our role is, that I don't see that as good use of time at the moment. But there's other things we probably in a strategic sense need to pick up. How do we enter this conversation around simplifying local government? How do we make sure things aren't done to us? So it's about that organising. And I know that's not a strategy that's sitting in front of us right now at the time frame, but I think that's got to trump everything else. Where Councillor Hopkins still talking, thank you.
No, I agree with you, but
It's Hopkins.
in some
I'm still talking.
oh, sorry, I thought you'd finished.
You. So I think that there's going to be our driver, and so I think this is a really good stock take for us to understand what we've got on the table and what we have in front of us, and what we need to be starting to work through. And I'm sure the chair will have some thoughts on how we go about this as well, is working out then how we give a bit of guidance to staff as to what our importance we put on each one is and what timeframes we want to see around things. And I guess I want to flag that how we talk about this simplifying local government proposal and how we actually step into this strongly and our work plan around that is something I want to see coming through in this committee, because if we're not actually leading that conversation and being clear on what our bottom lines are and how we talk to our community, when we talk to our community, when we talk to our interest groups, how we lift this whole thing up and turn it into something workable. If we don't do that, it will happen to us. And there's conversations already happening in the media about Waitaki and where our lines on the map lie and things like that. And we can only hold that at bay so long before we actually need to go, we need to tell people what our underlying thoughts are. And I think that this is probably a space where we need to slowly build what that looks like.
Thank you for that. Did you?
Just very quickly, I completely agree with you, Mel, but the only reason I asked the question is in some instances, there's a legal requirement to review. And I just wondered whether that was, and I should have mentioned that in my question, but whether any of those 4 strategies, all of which are overdue in terms of their specified timeframes, whether any of them are statutorily required to be reviewed within the stipulated period.
Thank you for your question. I think what we'll do is we will, I think what we have here is just an overall stock take in terms of where our strategy documents lie, and then we can give them more information that sits in behind that, that needs to. But it's actually helpful for us just to kind of see and then also prioritise what our focus needs to be over the next wee while, but also the interface of the different other committees as well and what their priorities are, just so we can have an overall overview. Thank you for the question, Councillor Hopkins. Just reconfirming that are there any other questions or comments in regards to this 5.1? We also have a recommendation that's sitting there just to receive and note the information. Okay.
Oh, we didn't. Look at all of this.
Yes, Councillor Linwood. Okay, so we're happy to move that we just accept the recommendation, and it's really just to receive a note that we've received this information and that we also understand there'll be other information that'll be happening in the background. And then you're seconding.
Sorry, I don't mean to be confrontational. The information on page where the resolution is actually says that part of the discussion is going to be about better off funding. We haven't even talked about it.
It's a different paper. That's the next one, 5.2. This is 5.1. So the 5.2 is what we're focusing on at the moment. That's been moved and seconded. Just a note to receive the information. No, the decision needs to be made at this point. Yes, Mayor Tivendale.
Again, just want to say thank you.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
To the team for putting this together. It is really helpful to see this in one space, and just acknowledging the coastal hazard strategy work that's to come. And I think that is something that is quite timely to our conversations around the long-term planning coming up. And probably the next one will be, how do we give you a bit more guidance on the prioritisation around this, and what else, like the coastal hazards, and like I've mentioned, the simplifying local government, what needs to feed into that might kind of also change our prioritisation a wee bit. So perhaps there's just a thought about how we do that meaningfully, so you guys get some clear guidance.
Thank you. So we can just put it to the committee that there's a mover with to go with the recommendation. All in favour?
Aye.
Those against? All right, that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 5.2, and this is acknowledging Councillor Hopkins' query around the Better Off funding update. So I'll pass that back to Ms. O'Neill. Thank you.
Yes, apologies for being on the resolutions mixed up.
Not a problem. Thank you. So the next paper, I'm very glad to see Shelley Windsor in the room. The next paper is regarding the Better Off funds, which you might remember was the 3.71 million, which was allocated to council in 2023. We have a timeline for these funds. They need to be claims fully completed and paid out by June 2027. And you might remember the last council's decision regarding 650,000 of the Better Off funds moving into waters, which you'll see on the financial spreadsheet in the report. So at this point in time, there's 796,500 remaining. And I recognise an earlier question in council regarding the Better Off funds around the work for the Māori economy, which Shelley will have more information on, so I'll hand over.
Kia ora koutou. Apologies for being late. I had 11 o'clock in my diary, so but here we are. Thanks, Joe. So just so you know, I'm partnership manager. I've only been at council since the beginning of November. So one of the key things I tried to do rather rapidly was get my head around Better Off funds and the historic nature of that funding and the projects involved. And there is a number of live projects that I've delved quite a bit into as we're moving through the process. As Joe said, funds need to be and projects need to be completed and claimed by 2027. So overall, the projects are on track. Importantly, they're being used as intended, so around community wellbeing, place-based outcomes and longer-term economic resilience. And we're actively managing those timelines towards mid-next year. You'll see that there's projects in your reading. They're at different stages, and that's quite deliberate. Some of them are quite straightforward, and some of them are more complex. And some of the key focus areas for me coming on in the Forward Waitaki group of projects. Two, which I'll mention, is the Waitaki Grown, which is diversification of our land use with an incredible group of farmers that are trialling medicinal herb crops. This project, they know they can grow it. Now we're on to the next phase, which is around how do we create markets and within the value chain. So there's a bit of work being done that I'm partnering with them on identifying who the customers are and the markets and so on. This involves sort of deeper partnership work, potentially with people like Barkers, who I've also had a very positive conversation with. So that project continues. I would imagine they're about to harvest their next crop, April, May. That might be a really great time to bring an update firsthand from the farmers to council or to this group. as we continue forward and looking at the return on investment for that one. The second one, which I've focused in on, is with our Runaka partners out at Moraki. They have been doing an incredible job down at the boulders, spending a lot of the Runaka's funds on the redevelopment of the cafe, etc. They were awarded some Better Off funds to enhance that and to create some cultural markers and significant artwork by Ross Hammerer down at the boulders. And this is really to drive the visitor economy. So, you know, bringing people into the district and showcasing places for them to see. It's also a significant part of the geopark. They have also done significant training with youth and, you know, hopefully as the demand and the visitation increases, job creation is potential down there as well. So that's those two. The next one, the Oamaru CBD, there is still some funds, as you would have seen in your pre-read, available there. So that's the next aspect that we're going to dive into in terms of the potential in Oamaru CBD. It was initially talked about looking at things like the library, etc. So we'll keep you updated on that. The other one that I'll mention is Palmerston. So with the Pukatupu track, that has been ongoing in terms of access and license to occupy with grazers and so on. That is very, very close to resolution to allow the trust to get in there very soon. So we should have an update on that this week that will go to the community board. And then Healthy Homes is another part of Better Off funds, aligned with the Healthy Homes for All 5-year strategy. There will be a full update on that at the next committee meeting by Kayla Stewart on progress on that strategy, the Better Off funds, and how we intend to spend the remainder there until 2026. There is a lot of work being done around that project, and it also is very aligned with Stronger Waitaki, which I'll do an update on shortly. As Joe mentioned, there was 650K of the Better Off funds diverted to the water done well, but as of now, all the other projects are going along, and we continue to put strong sort of governance around this in terms of reporting up to DIA and making sure that all the checks and balances are there in terms of reporting. So that's the update on Better Off funds. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions?
And just under the workforce skills development and possibly the entrepreneurship business incubation, but probably more the skills development, it's got that's not progressed. Is that something, because we've obviously got a number of groups working in that area actively, that we can partner with and see something happen with, or is your intention to do anything further?
Yeah, so as I've come on board, there are a couple of those projects that haven't, that we can see that haven't progressed. So it's not to say that they haven't, it's just looking at what's possible. So certainly in that Forward Waitaki one, which is the one you're referring to, we'll definitely look at what's possible and look at what partners we might team up with there or extend some of those other projects within that bucket. So, you know, there could be possibility with Waitaki Grown, for example, to increase skills or what have you. So probably the simple answer is we need to do some work there to investigate what's possible.
Thanks, Shelley. Just to add to that, excuse me, when Shelley came on board, of course, we'd had a previous role of community development and economic development. So the focus was how council would be delivering those projects. And of course, with the change with Shelley coming on board, it's more about the partnership perspective. So they hadn't kicked off because we didn't have resource within council. But now, of course, it's about enabling and uplifting groups within community to spend those funds. So yeah, hopefully that will progress.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I've got a couple of questions, well, 4 in fact, on this page related to funding. It's been a long time since we signed off better off funding around the council table. I think I was deputy mayor at the time, so either 2 or 3 terms ago. I'd like to know what this Waitaki Kaitiakatanga biodiversity project is, in addition to the land diversification. I also don't recall us ever signing off on an entrepreneurship business incubator, or for that matter, and I'm not challenging the principle, but I'd like to know what's actually happening with regard to workforce skill development. And I do question, again, the Maori economy, Maoraki. There is a difference between assisting an economy and providing money, as you have just said, to a specific business that was purchased from a private owner after we signed off better off funding. Now, I'm not sure that it's...
Can we just
Yeah.
go through the chair, please?
Sorry?
Speak through the chair, please.
Oh,
We'll go through your
apologies,
question.
Well, I'm not sure, Madam Chair.
The first question first, Jim, because you've put a
Okay.
few out there. We'll just allow a little bit of time, also acknowledging those that are actually in the committee to have an opportunity to feed in as well. So we'll go off your first one. That was around the Waitaki Kaitiakitanga
Yes.
land diversification. Whether any other information could be included.
That project was started and completed before my time, so I don't have the detail on that here. Joe, did you want to comment to that? Otherwise we can follow.
No, I'd just add to that the decision to sign off better off funds and the individual projects was certainly before my time too. My understanding was these projects, as were identified through the handover from the previous economic and community development manager, that these were actually the agreed projects for the intended outcomes. So I am uncertain about the process that was followed, but I see my colleague, Mr. Cook, has his hand up. Maybe he can offer some assistance.
Yeah, this is the Meraki Coastal Biodiversity Enhancement Project, which started in 2023. The key project outcomes were construction of 4.5 kilometres of rabbit-proof fencing from along the eastern headland of the Meraki Peninsula, extending to the Meraki Recreation Reserve to beyond the second Kaik. This fence will provide a long-lasting barrier between the steep coastal cliffs and the neighbouring agricultural land and allow more effective rabbit control populations in the longer term. Combination of buckthorn control, fencing, rabbit control, and provided conditions successful for planting more than 5,000 native plants, including large populations of national at-risk plant species. Best example of this is the North Outlook car park, and now boasts custom-made wooden furniture mounted on a platform overlooking this area. Official opening will be held on Saturday, the 9th of May at 10 a.m. where there'll be a presentation by the project manager on the achievements and the opportunities this recognise local communities' contribution to the success of the project.
Yes. But if I, through you, Madam Chair, if I may ask, I'm assuming from Mr. Cook's information that we haven't funded the cafeteria.
That's a separate project.
Haven't funded the cafeteria.
No,
No.
the funds haven't gone to the cafeteria. The point I was making was the Runanga have invested an incredible amount of money themselves out of Maoraki Limited. What the Better Off funds have funded is the Ross Hamara sculptures and cultural expression that leads from the main road down to the boulders. All those invoices and estimates have been provided to us against the project and the intent of the project to enhance, again, the experience of that asset.
I'd also like to add to that, sorry, Jim, that in meeting with the CEO at Moraki, they were quite clear that they were spending over $1 million down at the site. So the funds we were able to provide in partnership have supported cultural identity work, as Shelley has identified, but they themselves have invested a massive amount to make this quite an amazing visitor site too, which we very much support.
And the workforce skill development and entrepreneurial business incubator, what have we done? What's happening? How is that money being spent?
That was Mayor Mel's question just before around those two projects that they haven't progressed. So as Joe mentioned, we would need to partner with people. So the original intent when this was done, 3 years ago now, those two projects haven't proceeded because we haven't had the resource or we haven't found the right partners. But that's not to say they won't. At the moment, they haven't progressed. So that will be an area that we'll look into and keep everybody updated accordingly.
Thank you for that update, and thank you, Mr. Cook, for that update on the Kaitiakitanga, the rabbit protection project. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Holding, you had your hand up before.
Just for those other projects that Jim referring to, I think a lot of those came out of the uplifting ED strategy. So it was about getting a stronger workforce skill development for employers and helping entrepreneurs. But yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. It was sort of touched on earlier, I guess, about stepping into your role, Shelley, and the work happening to be more enabling of other groups to be able to deliver the work. But I think one thing, the Waitaki Grown project and land diversification, that's been one that's been really celebrated as a success story in terms of partnership with the community. And I guess, just interested, I guess, in your thoughts there. And it's good to see that there's contractor support there to keep that going. But what that looks like and the work being done, I guess, to ensure that, it is a success, or, that we are setting it up for as much success as possible into the future.
Yeah, so this is something that I've really focused in on with the farmer group, and I've had several meetings with them. In simple terms, they know they can grow some of these species now. The work that needs to be done is who are the audiences, and given my background in branding and marketing, I obviously can lean in and support there. And I've identified a potential contractor to work alongside me to support them. So it's going from, it's showing that commercial pathway and potential other collaborations or partnerships we might do with people like Barker's to halo, the good work. I mean, it's got storytelling written all over it. So this is the exciting next phase that we're about to go into, just as they're also harvesting year 2. So that there is some really good work there, and lots of potential. And I agree. And in fact, sitting in the economic development, the Otago Regional Group, this project I've talked quite a bit with my colleagues around the region, and there's quite a bit of interest in what we're doing, and also sharing other regions, diversification, because it's not just our district that's looking at this.
Thank you for that. I'm just picking up on that, and then whether there needs to be some of the underutilized, like resourcing to help channel, like whether it's a stage 2, 3, or, like the implementation. It's probably better to invest more in smaller amounts than spreading it across too wide and not getting the right outcome.
Yeah, spot on. So that would be something that we would bring to this committee or council, because some of those projects are underspent, or, when they were initially intended, things have changed or what have you, and there's potential. Why wouldn't we put more petrol on those high potential ones? So that is something we will come to this committee and probably council to make a recommendation once we're at that stage. And I would imagine that will be in the next 3 months.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, Councillor McCone.
Sorry, look, I am not on this committee, but I hope I'm allowed to ask these questions. But so could I just have a bit more clarification? It's on page 16 with the healthy, affordable homes. 235,000 allocated to housing policy and strategy specialist. Just expand on that, please. And the second part, I think you've answered it. So we still have the time to manoeuvre if the funds aren't spent under the legislation we were giving them in.
Yeah, so on the healthy affordable homes, that policy and strategy specialist is Dr. Kayla Stewart, and that spend is across, I think, at least 3 years. So Kayla, we are due, she was on leave, otherwise we would have tried to do the update in this committee meeting, but we're scheduled for a committee meeting update on that strategy work and next steps, and a lot of initiatives around housing that, you know, the people in my team are looking at. And as I said, it crosses over really strongly with Stronger Waitaki. So the other aspect of that is the community housing review with our property team. So again, we'll try and give you a full update on that at the next committee meeting. But it is definitely a focus of the team, given the pressures in the district.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm just speaking on that. I know that Stuart does really excellent work with the community organisations that are working in this space, and there are some initiatives that are happening behind the scenes around collaboration and partnerships with how we can help support housing opportunities that I know, and then more detail can be provided in due course.
Just a question on the workforce skill development, and again, I'm just an interested councillor, not a part of this committee. When you say workforce skill development, are you talking about a workforce that is already existing, or are we also talking about targeting young people that we can assist in developing a skill, be it in engineering, be it in, you know, as a hand in a garage pulling engines apart or anything like that? Do you have a specific target for that workforce?
I would have to go back to the initial intent when, you know, probably 2 or 3 years ago, what was written. Of course, times change. I think if we were going to dive into that, to Mayor Mel's questions and Councillor Jem, we would look into that. We would, where is the need? Is it youth? Is it retraining? Or we would look into that before we make a recommendation on what sorts of skills potentially we need to upgrade. I mean, gosh, who would have known even 12 months ago the impact of AI, for example? So yeah, I think if we were to look at that as a continuing project, we would make a recommendation around who and how and why. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Mel.
Just picking up on your question, Councillor Slack, because it's a really important one. And I guess what we're trying to do is create a bit of a process around this. And that feeds into some of the work Stronger Waitaki are doing and things when they actually work with a lot of our local employers. This is probably offshoots of what they do through different conversations we've had to understand where the need lies so that we can then build that into opportunities. And I know the chair, Hannah, has probably got some really good insights into what they've done in the Pacifica sense when they've worked with local employers and look for where the gaps lie and where we can actually run pilot programs and things to try and identify those gaps. I think whether or not we've currently got it sitting as widely across our community and as well understood as we could be is something that could be still improved. And a lot of the data that we're trying to work off, which comes in a lot of areas through either stats or through Stronger Waitaki. We'll be talking about it next on how we build our data that sits in underneath all of our decisions and to make it a bit stronger, because I think that's where the opportunities lie. Because this is currently, it's not a small amount of money, but in a project sense, it's not going to go a long way. So we are going to have to find a way to target where that goes. But I think it's a great opportunity, but in a wider sense, when we're looking at how we upskill our workforce and have those conversations and bring funding in nationally, I think that's a body of work itself that probably sits in the Stronger Waitaki space a little bit.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill.
Yeah, Mel, I was just going to excuse me, add to that, there's a lot of agencies at the moment, because of the recognition, the research recognition, that micro credentials are working really well for people, and it means that people can continue either in employment or education while they're gaining micro credentials as well. So considering the amount of funds, as Mayor Mel said, the amount that's actually allocated for that programme isn't a massive amount, so it's not something that we would simply use to get off the floor. It's actually something that we would be supporting people who are already in this space, and how those funds can strengthen and uplift the work that they're already doing.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I guess a question for me, based on what Mel and Joe have just said, I think the money has to be spent or returned by 2027. So if we're still in the process of developing the workforce skill development program, are we satisfied that we will actually meet that financial timeframe? Other question I have also in relation to 2027.
Councillor, can we do one at a time?
So we'll allow the first one. So you're requesting information on the spend plan and
Well, I'm just asking if perhaps Joe thinks that we can get there by 2027.
Yes, I do think that we can get there, and a big part of that is because of the work that Shelley's been doing around partnerships. And of course, we have people around the table who are involved with organisations that support rangatahi tamariki in upskilling and learning new skills to enter the workforce, as well as those agencies who, of course, provide micro credentials. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't set a plan of achievement and support with those funds by the end date.
So to defer to the Mayor again, under healthy, affordable homes, John's asked one question about the 235,000. I'm curious to know, the last line item there says planning underway for 2026-27. The quantum is 160,000, and it just says other initiatives, including expenses. Can that be clarified a little, please?
So that 145,000 is what's still to spend between now and 2027 for that initiative. So we would, by expenses, it would mean if we needed to invest in, I don't know, refitting a house or something like that. So the planning that Kayla is doing is around how we would intend to allocate that money, and any time or expenses would be documented and provided to this group.
There's a housing strategy that has an
Yeah.
implementation plan. So the idea would be that she would be able to channel it towards progressing some of those
Correct.
initiatives that are sitting there waiting. But I think that we're branching into the operational space. What we can do is we can I think what we can feel is just the questioning line that everyone are sharing today, which is really important for us to have a good understanding of. And what the team can do in the background is just to provide some additional information and
Yeah.
present that back to us. So some of the themes that are coming through from today is around workforce development, and indicating that that is one of our priorities that we're really interested in. And particularly, like from our perspective from community groups around the Stronger Waitaki, is around youth.
Yeah.
The NEETs percentage that is there. MSD have a national policy that's going to be put in place for 18 and 19-year-old job seekers.
Yeah.
Implementation is scheduled for November. And then also adult vocational training as well, signalling that is a priority area. There's also some of the housing initiatives that we have an interest in understanding a wee bit more in terms of what the spend will be and what the outcome. If we focus just on the outcome, then, you know, the rest of it you can take care of behind the scenes. And then there's an interest in the Waitaki growing, the land diversification project as well, and what we can do to helpfully support that. It's got off to a really good start. You can see the potential, what else needs to be done to help support it, and then acknowledging the funds that have been provided to Moeraki, Runaka as well to help fully support it. Like they shouldn't be expected to cover a lot of those cultural markers themselves as part of our placemaking for our district. So it's important that we help fully support, and that's what the fund is intended for. So if there are no other questions or comments, Mayor Tavendale.
Just myself, and then there's Sven online who's got his hand up. But just picking up from what you were saying there, Hannah, it'd be really good to, as projects and different lines come to a close, to celebrate what we're actually achieving and bring them to us in a way that we can then talk about it a bit stronger in the community. Because I think some of these, it's great, it's, we've done that, but I don't think we've actually taken the time to say, hey, this is what we've achieved, which is a really good news story. And, some of the groups that we're helping partner with, like Waitaki Grown, it'd be great to have them in the chamber, not in a, hey, justify what's going on, but let's actually hear about what we've achieved as a community and what we can learn from it. So I think that there's some really good news stories in there that perhaps we could get in front of us at some stage.
100%. And I'm looking over in the corner to John. But yes, we've certainly had several conversations with the engagement team around how we do tell those stories and how we celebrate and showcase those stories within our community, but also wider, using those to support any central government asks or, collaboration within the wider region.
That's great, thank you. Aroha mai, Councillor Thaunin, I'm seeing your hand there. You have a question or a comment to make? You're on mute. Are you there, Sven? Okay. Okay. All right, so we will go back to the start of this paper, and there's a recommendation there that this committee receives and notes the information moved by Deputy Mayor Rebecca, seconded by Councillor Holding. Those in favour? Those against? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. That's 5.2. We'll move to 5.3. And this is the Stronger Waitaki update.
Okay, so the Stronger Waitaki team have put together this document for your information. Stronger Waitaki is the backbone of enablement from Council for social service responsiveness to our community needs. And you'll see from the document they do a significant body of work, and they work with partnering with social agencies to ensure that strengthening of the community can occur. So a big key element for them and a focus at the moment is around data-driven decision making, how they collate that data, the importance of that data, and how we can use that to feed through into strategies for the future, ensuring that key advocacy that is carried out makes inroads and certainly matters for our community. There are a couple of elements that Ali has put together in this paper, and I want to acknowledge the work that Ali has done with her team, but that she's on leave at the moment. So I'll hand over to Shelley to complete the presentation.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so Ali's on leave, otherwise she would be here to update. But her alongside the committee have been doing an incredible amount of work in the last 6 months on strategic refresh of the network, and is having really, really great endorsement and response amongst the wider ecosystem and network, which is great. So you would have read the document. Probably the key point is around that data backbone, and the team are doing some work at the moment around data projects and what have you, particularly around homelessness, and some other key aspects within the committee. And, you know, again, it comes back to our role as councillors enablement and to really support that collective action within Stronger Waitaki. So from the Q1 meetings, just a quick recap that's in the paper. Some sort of themes are coming through from each of the different groups. You know, service visibility and access, you know, this fragmented referral pathways that continue, increasing mental health complexity, ongoing housing pressures. And from a council perspective, this is really useful intelligence, and it's probably things that you're hearing yourselves out within the community. And just understanding as council, where do we lead, where do we enable, and where do we advocate? And they're questions that the committee's always asking, but certainly Ali and myself supporting Ali are consistently asking. And probably a question for the committee. We have the Stronger Waitaki Steering Group, which comes together. You know, issues are identified through the different working groups within the network. They come to that steering committee. And then if we need advocacy support, this would be a natural forum to do that. So I just wanted to probably just question for the committee, are we comfortable with that model? So working groups, steering group, and then any escalation or support we might need from council would come to this group. That would be our recommended sort of framework for that, but just conscious this is a first committee meeting, so.
No, thank you. And I think that's a meaningful question. Do we have any feedback or comments from the committee members? Mayor Tevendale.
Just acknowledging, so on a council sense, I'm our representative on Stronger Waitaki, and we've got Hannah, who is the Pacifica representative. So we do have a wee bit of representation around the council table on Stronger Waitaki. I do think that there's twofold that this could work, and it's Stronger Waitaki identifying where us as a council can help and where they come to us and say this is a gap that we think council could play a part in. Are you interested? And I think that's really valuable. And around the advocacy space, and we talked about that at the Stronger Waitaki table, of that going both ways. So there'll be times when us feeding into Stronger Waitaki is really important, and then vice versa. So it's creating those advocacy plans. And the data, I think where we can support the increase in their data capacity is probably got major wins for us as a community, because all of our funding avenues are more and more requiring a good data set to underpin any funding applications, that kind of thing. So the better we understand our community and where our gaps are and can actually provide proof around them, the better that is for us as a community. And I really appreciate their wish to come to us where they see us having an advocacy role and saying, hey, we think you guys can help us here. And, you know, we're giving the opportunity in this one here to talk to the media and how they deal with our young people coming up very shortly. But I think there's going to be a lot of ways, and for us to make sure there's a two-way conversation so they know when we are heading to Wellington or when we've got a minister in town or, you know, those kind of things, so we can go to those kind of networks as well as internally at council and say, hey, you know, what's happening in our community in this space that we need some help with. So I think this could be a really strong partnership if we do it well.
Thank you for that. And yeah, fully agree. I think the partnership approach that works both ways will be really helpful. I think also acknowledging the back of office support and the infrastructure that council provides, the community development team, that actually helps to coordinate and help facilitate the Stronger Waitaki network itself is really critical. That needs to be upheld and maintained and sustained. Any other feedback around that question? Around the idea of the Stronger Waitaki Steering Group utilising this committee to help support any advocacy that it requires. Councillor Holding.
Probably not a question, but just more of a comment. It's good to actually have this update today, because I feel like through the organisational changes could have been not separated, but it hasn't, not across all these issues. So I'd agree with sort of Mayor Tavendale's comments around what we know what's happening in our community and where we can help with strategise where needed, but more of a comment.
I was just going to add to Mayor Mel's comments that internal and external communication through that partnership is just such a key element. And I think what we've seen is that sometimes that falls over a little bit for the desire to move forward with some bodies of work on both parts. So we have some work to do around figuring out just how this committee can be part of that, and also ensuring that the messaging and the decisions that are made from council do feed out to the very important community groups that Stronger Waitaki have already formed. So just to make that comment.
Okay. Also in that paper, just worth noting was the proposal to support development of a district youth strategy. So there is as part of the network, there is a youth group, but just thinking about, and this would, a lot of parallels and probably synergies with the youth council, is thinking about that youth strategy. And this is where that workforce piece might come in too. So all these things are interconnected, of course. So just looking at this committee's support, if you like, for us to the team and the wider Stronger Waitaki group to look forward to a youth strategy that would sit within that broader workforce and economic priority.
Thank you for that, and I think it's really important, and it's quite key because we do have two in our committee that are supporting the youth council. If they wanted to make some comments about that, Deputy Mayor Rebecca.
Thank you. And it was great to have Ali come along to our youth council meeting last month and introduce herself and sort of talk about Stronger Waitaki and the synergies there. And I think it's really exciting that a youth strategy is being discussed, and there's some really great examples around the country of councils that have adopted youth strategies and the work that's happening in that space. And really keen to be empowering our youth council to be really stepping into that and making sure that there's a strong youth voice in that process. I guess, have a question on that, and maybe Courtney might want to feed in as well from the youth council perspective. But I guess what role does council play in this versus Stronger Waitaki as the enabler, and making sure that that we get as many youth voices in that process?
Yeah, I mean, again, if we think about that model we just talked about, I think it would be looking at that group, taking ownership of developing that with the support of the committee and the wider network, and then us coming to this committee for any sort of gaps or advocacy that might need, and certainly that visibility and recommendation. So I think potentially that framework is a really good way to approach that, if that makes sense. Good test.
Thank you for that, Mel.
I guess just expanding on that a wee bit too, and I just think about the process that was undertaken for the housing strategy way back when, and the difference between endorsing and adopting is probably the conversations that we need to have, because when we're creating a strategy outside of council, looking at the community levers and bringing in all the different voices, there is a real danger if we're trying to adopt something as a council, which also has implications that sit outside of council, that there's a willingness or wish for councillors to change it all and to make it. So I think it's recognising that these kind of strategies do sit outside of council, and they're not our strategies, but there is a recognition that if we've had a good process around it, and if council are comfortable with what the process looks like, which is probably what we need to feed back into this committee, and how we've done it, what falls out of that as a strategy is a community strategy that we can endorse, but it's probably best to step away from the adopt, because I think then all of a sudden that says, hey, we haven't worked on this as a council, but we're being asked to adopt this and to probably adopt any costs that go with that. So I think that that's probably a clear delineation we need to make, just to make sure everyone's comfortable with the process moving forward.
Thank you for that. That's a helpful comments. Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, I hadn't thought of that, but I think it's a brilliant idea, quite seriously. because even if the committee did support a youth strategy, it would have to go to council for adoption. And my concern is that I have a feeling that if council adopted a youth strategy, there would be an excessive expectation as to what council might provide. In the last term, I don't know whether, I know Tim Blackler went along with myself. I think you may have been there as well, Rebecca. There was a survey produced, I think, by YMCA, and a lot of the things that kids identified or young people identified were things that the council could not actually deliver, like tertiary education or more jobs, or even venues for young people to congregate, not, I guess, clubs or whatever. So from that point of view, the difficulty is, to some extent, we're captives of location and size, and that means a reduced number of opportunities, which is problematic for young people and probably explains why a significant number do go and then maybe come back. But I think the idea that Mel has proposed of a community strategy that council can say, yes, we like that, but it's not ours, actually makes a lot more sense and probably allocates responsibilities better as well. I would personally support that idea wholeheartedly.
Thank you for your comments. I think it's not abdicating our responsibility, but it's actually a partnership approach that we can helpfully support stronger Waitaki through the, like if they would like to develop something like a youth strategy. And then I think if there's a clear process and a methodology around managing expectations as well, but actually helping to support, like what the outcome needs to be.
One very quick question. I noticed that with the group of people who might be involved, service organisations, education providers, Hannah, your group isn't identified, and personally, I think they're probably key players in this area and should be included from the start. I'm wondering if we have a view on that.
Yes, with another hat on, yes.
Pardon?
Yes, support your comment. Any other feedback around this question is what they're seeking is endorsement of Stronger Waitaki's role as enabler in the youth sector to scope, facilitate and partner in developments of a district youth strategy to be signed off by this committee in due course.
Probably a couple of things, because I'm happy to move that, but I guess that final comment of signed off by this committee, I do still think it's really helpful for these to be cited by council. And again, probably the endorse rather than signed off. So just being careful what our language is around that. But I think it certainly comes here first, and for that to be a recommendation, I would like to see this committee ultimately make up to council so that the full council is aware of that.
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you. The next point in the paper was around the youth privacy protection. So there was a situation with St Kevin's College and Joe Walsh has in the midst of submitting a petition to Parliament around better protecting students' privacy and wellbeing during disciplinary processes. So some of you might be aware of this. Just asking the committee to consider providing or endorsing support of Joe, and that might be something like a letter from council. I know that she's also collecting a lot of other support from, I believe, the other schools and other stakeholders. So just something for this committee to consider.
Thank you for that, Shelley. Do we have any comments from the committee? Mel.
Sorry, I feel like I've been commenting a wee bit much, but I would like to get the approval of the committee to write a letter in support of this. It's not about not being able to discuss things in the media, but it is just recognising the process around it. Like if something goes to the Ministry of Justice or through the court system, there is a bit of a suppression on that until an outcome is come to. And I think that it can do a lot of damage in a small town. And I think we do have some issues around mental health and other areas like youth
And
suicide that we need to take seriously as leaders in our community. So I think sort of sending a clear message saying we would love to, as a community, talk about how we talk about these things, how we put support around these things, rather than it being run sort of online in a bit of a witch hunt style before the facts are out there, because I think our young people aren't actually equipped to deal with that. And I think we're creating some real issues as a community to deal with later. So if there's a bit of a process that we can get agreed to at national level around how we deal with this so that things can still go through a good process, but it's not a trial before the conversations even hit the teachers and the staff in charge, I think that would be important. So I would like to be able to support this if I have the support roundtable.
Yeah, so excuse me, just to note Mayor Mel's comments and the importance of this work and endorsing this work. I think the conversation that we had was about ensuring that other members of the education and the social community were in support of it as well. It's something that is so important to be having the conversation around protections and care of our youth in situations that make them vulnerable. That actually it would be great to see much more significant support, but absolutely for the committee to support the work that they're doing alongside Joe Walsh.
Thank you for that, Joe. Yes, Councillor Lewis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Whilst I'm not a member of this committee, I am obviously a member of council and a member of the community, and I'd just like to echo those sentiments. I think it's vitally important that we put any protections around that we possibly can, because it's unfair to all parties for things not to actually have their due process. And I think if we can support that widely, I think we should, absolutely.
Thank you, and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Echo, I guess a lot of the comments that Mayor Tavendale and Councillor Lewis just made. I guess the one thing that I would like there to be a bit more conversation on is whether, I guess, restricting media could unintentionally shift more of the conversation into that unregulated informal space. And I think that is probably one of the real dangers here with this. So I think we probably just do need to be mindful of that. Because when we're talking about, stories being shared widely online, and it's the comments that are coming then that are really dangerous. And then without that formal kind of, media guidelines around covering this sort of issue, I just fear that we fall more into those sort of community pages, just sharing comments from students or principals and the dangers that then that creates. So I just hope that that's kind of part of the wider conversation.
Yeah, I would imagine, and again, I haven't had a conversation with Joe Walsh or anyone at the college, but just with my comms hat on, I would imagine the school would put out official comms when and how and they're able to try and control some of that narrative. And also if they've had media training around how to engage on social or not, and things like that. So perhaps that's a bigger part of her plan. And if it's not, maybe it should be. But I can check into that, because I think you make a really good point. It's really difficult when things go into those comments.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, I share Councillor Ryan's view. Like Dan, I'm not on the committee, but and I presume at some point, because if there was going to be a vote today, there should have been a resolution. So I presume this will come at some other point. My view is the unintended consequence of saying yes, this is a good thing, curtailing or prohibiting mainstream media from reporting these matters. You would have, in my view, more harm generated as a consequence of uncensored and unfettered comments from all manner of persons and points of view on social media. The other matter that I think hasn't been appropriately considered is there are genuine public interest issues here. The quality of a school's character and its security and safety, its ability to protect, in general instances or most cases, a majority of students from the predations or adverse consequences of behaviour from a minority. These are matters of public interest. Public funding goes into them, there's parental concerns. There are a whole range of things that, in my view, are legitimate issues for the media to cover. And to simply say, oh no, we shouldn't mention these issues because they might upset people. In some instances, I'm sorry, some of those people might deserve to be upset because their conduct is, put bluntly, unacceptable. And I'm not sure that I would support this, supporting this. I'd be interested in what any resolution or recommendation, how it might be worded before I'd actually commit to saying yay or nay.
Thank you for your feedback, Mayor Melanie.
I guess just to respond, and there's a couple of things to pick up on here, especially around the social media side of things. And I think there's a conversation to be had in our community as a whole around, the people that manage those pages. Is there conversations that we need to start having and mature conversations? And I get you're not going to always be able to do them well. When it comes to, is this a valid thing to be out in the community? After there has been a process when there's actually been two people walk to the table and able to work out what's happened and what the outcome is. So basically, in a way, a quasi-trial, when that's actually happened and there's been an ability for there to be a fair look at what's happened and the information, rather than jumping to the conclusion in the next morning's paper around who's at fault there. I think all we're asking for is a bit of breathing room to have a fair process in behind it. Because I agree that, our schools are publicly funded and there needs to be some community conversation in that space. But we also need to know what our schools are doing about this, because they are dealing in a space that is moving all the time and there's a huge amount of risk in that space. I don't need to know what's happening at the school until there's been a process so we actually understand properly what's happening, not this person said this and this person said this. We're not the ones that are going to do that. I think there needs to be a good process and an understanding and outcome, and that's where we need to protect. In a court system, we do not sit there and talk about the guilty party in the media until it's been found that they are the guilty party in the media. Also around that, I think it's really helpful for our community to understand how our schools are dealing with incidents and issues. And I think that needs to be part of that conversation, because quite often that's not being included in the article as to what's actually happening, because we cannot control any person who walks into our school. We have a lot of risk there as a community. What we can do is look at how we deal with it and what processes in place, and that's where the conversation needs to happen in the community. So I take that, and I think we need to, in our response, talk about how we also need to manage the effect of the online community on our young people. I don't think that they can be separated. And so probably with that, we need to also acknowledge that if we're not giving our media the space to put some facts and figure around that in that space you can have a community do that. So I do think there's a wider conversation around how we actually as a community have these conversations in a good way. But this is it's a tool and it's a first conversation, and it's not without issue. But I'm happy to draft something and have that come back around the councillors for us to discuss at a later date.
Thank you for that. Councillor Linwood.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief because Mel actually just covered off a lot of what I was going to say, but I just want to echo my support for you writing that letter. But yeah, a bigger issue, I think, isn't necessarily the media writing the stories, it's the comments that follow on the stories on social media for everyone to see. So perhaps our community would benefit more from some social media training and when not to comment on things. But very happy to support you in that.
Thank you for that. I think we were blended as a really nice, well-balanced conversation and discussion. And that we've had, like feedback around it's important to support from a social perspective, acknowledging the psychological harm and damage that it has on our young people, but also the noting the unintended consequences. If we come down too hard, like what are the unintended consequences of this and the dangers of it, and then also acknowledging the genuine public issues and the genuine public interest test versus protecting our young people, but also just acknowledging that one of the main issues for this was the easy identification of our young people in a small community. And that's, I think, what the trigger point actually was. So then it's kind of fed into a broader kind of conversation around broadcasting standards, reporting, legislation, and all of the other things that I've had on. So it indicates to me that there's a lot of thought and nice depth in our discussion today. And it's something for Shelley to kind of take note with Ellie when the networks are meeting together with the schools and the school leaders in the community. But also at the heart of it is they're just asking us for support for her petition to Parliament. The Mayor has acknowledged that she can draft a letter up for us. She will circulate it and then receive some feedback from there as a starting point, if that's acknowledged by the committee. It's not a recommendation or motion, it's just feedback.
That's one very quick final question, and not related to this, totally unrelated matter.
Yeah, 5 seconds, councillor.
Yeah, look, page 27, the very last reference on the report from Stronger Waitaki refers to Toast Electric or Electrical as a company that can help people. I know nothing about this. Can you give us a little bit of information?
Hang on.
Thank you. That's a very cool initiative, actually.
Sorry?
That's a very cool initiative. And then I'll invite either Ms. O'Neill or the Mayor to make comment of it. Maybe Ms. O'Neill.
Yeah, so the initiative essentially, and Mel, correct me if I get any of this wrong, is for every 4 families that can actually pay their power bill, there'll be a family who is struggling to pay it, that this organisation as a not-for-profit would pay that bill. So essentially it's using funds that are created from the income from those who can pay for power to pay for those people who wouldn't be able to pay their power bill.
That's a cool initiative, isn't it? Okay, yes, Mayor Tevendale.
Yeah, and just to expand, and so rather than it being a usual company as we see where the profits go back into the company and things, they're using the profit margins to then invest and help out the more needy members of the community. So it's got real possibilities, and I think we're just talking about whether or not we can have that conversation, whether it's something we can bring to our community as an option, and it doesn't take away the choices for people, but they can see how it stacks up against their provider now, and it's got a wider community benefit with it. So yeah, certainly worth looking into. And I'd recommend you Google it. They've got a website and there's a fair bit of information on there that's helpful to look through.
Thank you.
No, that's great, and acknowledging Ellie and the team's advocacy for trying to bring these types of opportunities for our community. I'm just going to take it back to the start of this report. There's a recommendation that's sitting there. If there are no other comments or questions, that the Strategy and Advocacy Committee receives and notes the information. Deputy Mayor Rebecca is happy to move. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Linwood. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of our meeting. Just acknowledging anyone that's watching online and also Councillor Downing that has been part of this online. And thank you to our officers for supporting the information that's been presented here and all of the work. And please extend our acknowledgement to the rest of the team that sits in behind this committee to help support. Thank you very much. And we'll bring this meeting to a close. Thank you.